Thank you, Madam Acting Deputy President. The government does not support this one-size-fits-all bill amending the Fair Work Act as proposed. Won't be effective, won't be scalable and it won't be quick. So the government will be opposing the Greens bill, the Fair Work Amendment COVID Bill 2020. I'd like to start off with my contribution to this debate by talking a bit about how businesses and how Queenslanders have been working and coping with COVID over these past few months. And one of the things that I've found as I've travelled around Queensland, and I've been everywhere from out to Eromanga in the southwest corner up to Windora and up to the far north quite a few times, driving around my home state, is that when you speak and listen to Queenslanders, they are very much relieved that Scott Morrison is the Prime Minister and that the National Cabinet under his leadership has worked together and has worked to save lives and protect livelihoods. And in particular, businesses and those who work in the businesses are so appreciative of what the government has done through the JobKeeper program. It should not be ever underestimated or even overestimated, perhaps is a better way of putting it, in terms of the positive impact that JobKeeper has had on protecting businesses and saving livelihoods in Queensland, to make sure that when we get through coronavirus and when there is a vaccine and that Australia is safe, that there will be businesses standing up and there will be thousands and millions of people working in those businesses. And so for the JobKeeper program is something, I don't know who can take credit for it, whether it's Mr Morrison or Mr Frydenberg, or it was a collective effort around the Expenditure Review Committee of Cabinet. But what it has done to protect the economy of Australia is something that I'm grateful for, and I know that many businesses and employees in Queensland are grateful for. And of course, we've got to not forget that the money that is being used to fund these programs is money that is being spent on behalf of the taxpayers of Australia. It is money that has been earned by those working, whether as pay-as-you-go taxpayers or those working in businesses, that their blood, sweat and tears goes towards these taxes, and that any government, whether at a territory, state or Commonwealth level, needs to make sure that the money we expend on behalf of the taxpayers of Australia is spent appropriately and soberly. And we should not forget that the money that is being spent to save the Australian economy at the moment is money that is not sitting in a vault of the Reserve Bank. It's not sitting hidden in the Treasurer's office. It is money that we are borrowing. It is money that we are borrowing to ensure that we have it today, but it is money that will have to be repaid by the taxpayers of tomorrow and of next year in decades' time. And that's why sometimes it is concerning, as someone who sits on the right of politics, to when you really do listen to what the left say, that they're very, very good at spending other people's money. They're very, very good at wanting to spend money without recourse to what the achievement of those taxpayers has been in working to save that money. And this government, and I'll take those interjections, this government has made sure that the money that we have spent, and it is an eye-watering amount, is money that has been spent to ensure that there will be businesses and there will be employees standing up once we get through this pandemic. However, I do fear that those on the left sometimes might think this is a perfect opportunity in which to just spend and spend and spend and borrow and borrow and borrow. And the line sometimes does have to be drawn, because we do have to stand up for the taxpayers of Australia. We do have to stand up for those who are going to come after us and will have to pay off this quite large debt. But we've got to look at what has been the strategic objective of the Prime Minister and the National Cabinet since the coronavirus began, and it is all about saving lives and protecting livelihoods and ensuring that when we deal with coronavirus, that we suppress it as much as possible, so we can ensure that the economy keeps going until a vaccine is found, and that Australians are vaccinated against the coronavirus. Now, we're all aware that this pandemic is taking a heavy toll on Australia, on individuals, on families and on communities. We are all aware of the impact, especially in my home state of Queensland, where we have a Labor government who has not just one eye open on the upcoming state election in 68 days' time, but 2 days open on it. And everything that I see that our Premier does is through the context of how she's positioning herself for this upcoming state election, and that is disappointing, and especially how she's using the politics of border wars to divide people. We have a situation in Queensland where those who live in border communities are facing immense stress, and I speak as someone who lives broadly in the border communities. I live on the Southern Downs, and we've seen situations in Queensland where a mum has given birth in northern New South Wales but has been unable to visit her newborn baby, who had to be transported to hospital in Queensland. We've seen a situation in Queensland where children were unable to go and see their dying father. It's in a situation, my mum texted me over the weekend that one of her friends was unable to go to her own brother's funeral. This is the situation we're facing in Queensland, where we have a government who are quite happy to use coronavirus as an alibi to cover up their failed record on the economy, their failed record in Queensland, where we've got a state government who had, before coronavirus came along, the highest levels of business bankruptcies, the lowest levels of business confidence. And the only thing that has been saving Queensland actually has been the actions taken by this federal government in relation to the JobKeeper payments, the other payments that have been put out by the government, and also through the job seeker supplement. And it's somewhat ironic that in Queensland there are parts of Queensland calling out for workers, calling out for workers to come and work on the farms, to go and pick the fruit. And it is something that I've picked up in the travels that I've done around Queensland, that we do need, that there are jobs going in Queensland, but they are in regional Queensland. And I would encourage people to move to regional Queensland. I live there, my office is in a different region. I love all of Queensland, but for some reason, sometimes people don't want to shift. And I'd say to them, there is work there. Go west, go north. It may not be work that you like, but that it is work. So we are supporting people through JobKeeper, through JobSeeker. And the government's pandemic leave disaster payment is another such support measure. We've put it in place to support those who don't have paid leave entitlements remaining, yet have been directed to isolate for 14 days when they otherwise would have been working. We put this program in place quickly. It was announced on the 3rd of August. Service Australia started accepting claims on the 5th of August, and payments started flowing a day later on the 6th of August, and already more than almost 7,000 claims from residents and non-residents have been received, and over $8 million has been paid to those in need. We're doing everything we possibly can to support those who have been told to self-isolate or quarantine. Workers with no paid leave entitlements, such as casuals and contractors, may, for financial reasons, decide to continue working. What we've also done is we have allowed people to access their super early. And what has been interesting about the howls of outrage from those on the left is it is outrageous that this Liberal National Government has allowed workers to access super early. And the howls of outrage from Paul Keating, that failed Prime Minister of this country, that Prime Minister who deliberately pushed this country into recession, this Prime Minister who tells the workers of Australia, you can't access your own money. I, Paul Keating, know better than you. The arrogance of the left when it comes to dealing with other people's money. The super contributions that have been put into the super accounts are the monies that belong to the workers. And if people wish to access that, to assist themselves throughout this pandemic, throughout this crisis that is facing Australia, well, I say they should be allowed to do that. They should be allowed to access their own money to help themselves through this crisis. But oh, no. Those on the left don't want that to happen. Those on the left want the funds to stay in these huge super funds. And a fun fact, Madam Acting Deputy President, there's about, my understanding is about $30 billion has been withdrawn from super funds over the last few months, capped out at $10,000 per financial year. That's about the same amount as administration fees that are charged by these super funds. We've got these multi-billion, it's a trillion-dollar industry, these multi-billion super funds who are in the pockets of big unions, in the pockets of Labor and big business, but it's the Labor and the unions who do not want the workers to have access to their own funds. So the government is doing everything possible from supporting those who wish to employ people, those who wish to continue employing people, supporting those who have found themselves sadly without work through the job seeker supplement. But this bill and the amendment as proposed by the Greens will not assist the situation. Will not help people as the Greens do think. So the government will not be supporting the amendments. It is welcoming to see that employers' ability to bear any additional costs during an unprecedented pandemic is acknowledged by the amendment, so they get a tick for that. However, the amendment as proposed by the Greens creates a new obligation on employers and employees. The additional burden of administering payments and seeking reimbursement is not what businesses and individuals need at the moment, particularly those in Victoria, but anyone around the country who are struggling. It will exacerbate cash flow issues for many businesses. And this is what it comes down to, Madam Acting Deputy President, that on this side of the chamber and on my own party in Queensland, we have so many people who've come from the business world or who speak to the business world on such a regular basis that we understand the issues that are facing businesses in Australia, and as importantly, we understand the issues that are facing workers in Australia, and we understand what we need to do to make sure that Australia gets through this pandemic. And that's why the government's priority since day one has been about saving lives. It's been about protecting livelihoods. It's about embarking on a strategy of suppressing coronavirus so that our hospitals can cope with any clusters that may erupt. But it is all about making sure that Australia is fighting fit for when we get through this coronavirus and we get into, whether it's the end of this year or into the new year, to make sure that Australia is fit and fighting, ready, having fought and beaten coronavirus. Thank you, Madam Acting Deputy President.